Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to squat. My presentation, I think, will be in English, so I apologize for that, for those who do not speak English. I have tried to add Lao onto the slides so you can get a sense as to what we're talking about. So, we know that violence against women and girls, or gender-based violence, happens in every city, in every country in the world. Thank you. Thanks. We know it happens in every city, in every country in the world. And cities are generally well equipped to respond to violence against women and girls. There's lots of services in Vientiane capital, for health services, hospitals, social services, police, justice. But we need to think not just about the physical space of the cities. We need to think about the online space, because violence is also happening online. And violence happens across a continuum. So violence that begins in the online space can then leak into the real world, and vice versa. Violence that begins in an intimate relationship, for example, in the real world, can also be perpetrated online. So it's important that when we talk about preventing violence in urban settings, that we consider both the physical and the online context. You may have heard of the concept of online violence or cyber violence or digital violence, and these are all correct terms, but the term that we prefer is technology-facilitated gender-based violence, using this definition that's on the slide here. And it's important that we use this broader definition because it includes not just things that happen on social media, but when people use their phone to take photos up your skirt or sin, for example, or texting, or they're using their phones to track people around cities. So it's important that we use the correct terminology. So, technology-facilitated gender-based violence or online violence has similarities to violence generally, in that it does happen in every city, in every country in the world, and it is rooted in gender inequality, so inequality between men and women. But there are lots of differences about online violence. You can be totally anonymous when you perpetrate violence online. It can happen by a stranger. You can do it on the other side of the world, to someone that is in an entirely different country. Once harmful images are in the internet, it is very difficult to get rid of them, and it can be perpetrated and spread very quickly. So I'll give you an example. If a young man shares a nude photo of his girlfriend to one friend, just one, and let's say it goes via WhatsApp. His friend, in just a few click of buttons, can send to 5 of his friends, forward it on in 3 seconds. Those friends might then download it, send it to someone's inbox, upload it to Facebook, upload it to Twitter. And so even if Facebook, for example, acts very quickly and removes that content, the nude photo that was spread, it's already with 5 other people. So it means that it is very, very difficult to remove harmful content once it exists, and there is very little accountability or punishment for those who perpetrate online violence. Sorry, I didn't have time to translate this into Lao, but basically, when we think about the use of technology in Laos, in urban settings, it's actually quite high. So about 85% of the population use mobile phones, and 62% of the population have access to the internet. When we think about urban settings, Around 46% of people use the internet very regularly. And of course, this is very much reduced once you get to the village level. Of the 3.35 million social media users in Laos, 47% of Facebook users are women, 59% Instagram users are women, and 31% of Twitter are women. And this is important because women are targeted for online violence a lot more than men are. So globally, about 85% of people have experienced online violence, and if you look at Asia Pacific, where Laos is, it's about 88%. So it's it doesn't have the highest prevalence of online violence, but it doesn't have the lowest either. Now, we don't have any equivalent data in Laos as to how often this happens, and actually we didn't really know if it happened in Laos. So we conducted a series of focus group discussions and key informant interviews, particularly with young people, with boys, with young boys, with young women, with women with disabilities, LGBTIQA plus people, and then government staff. And we asked them, was this happening? And if so, what did it look like? How does this manifest in Laos? So this is, to date, the only data that we have on this type of violence, but it told us a lot. It told us that these were the groups that were disproportionately impacted by violence online. So all women, young women and adolescent girls, LGBTIQA plus people and women with disabilities are targeted and are subjected to higher levels of this type of violence. That's not to say that men did not experience violence. They also reported experiencing it, just at a lot lesser rate, which is also the same in the real world as well. We discovered from these focus group discussions that predominantly it was men that was perpetrating this violence. Again, the same as in the real world, in offline. It was both Lao men and foreign men. And in terms of the relationship between the perpetrators and the victim survivors, they were often romantic partners or ex-partners. They could be complete strangers. Or they could be just people known to them, friends, acquaintances, friends of friends, people in the neighbourhood, someone they met on a dating app, that type of thing. So I don't have very much time, and I'm also very aware that I'm speaking in not your language. So I just wanted to very quickly show you a few of the different quotes that came out of these focus group discussions so you could get a sense of what was happening. So online sexual harassment or cyber obsessional pursuit, the idea is that people are repeatedly harassing people online, asking for dates, requesting sex. Even when people say no, they are consistently contacting them, messaging them, calling them. And you can see in this example that, particularly if these came up a lot in the cities, that people would go around to their house and just turn up at their house if they knew that they were at home to try to have sex with them. Image-based abuse, there are three types of behaviours for this type of abuse. It's the non-consensual taking of photos, or sharing a photo, so it's randomly sending, a nude photo to someone else without them saying they want it. Or the other example is consensually receiving perhaps a photo of a romantic partner, a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but then without their consent, sharing it with a third party, with friends or strangers. So you can see some examples here on the slide. On the left is an LGBTIQA plus young male, a gay male, saying that he just randomly received a call, a video call when he picked up. It was an old white man showing a video of their genitals. And then on the right we have a quote from the Ministry of Technology and Communications where they talk about people in romantic relationships, and they receive many cases where the male partner will take intimate photos or videos whilst they're in the relationship and then use it as blackmail once they break up to try to get them to go back out with them or give them their belongings back or whatever it may be. In every single focus group discussion, it repeatedly came up that social media was being used by recruiters and particularly foreign men in neighbouring countries to try to recruit young women, particularly in their 20s, to go to the special economic zone or the Golden Triangle. This came up in every single focus group discussion. Trafficking happens in every country in the world, but in this region it is at a particularly high rate. And this is the new recruitment strategy by foreign recruiters to offer what seems to be a viable job opportunity. Sometimes they'll say you can go farming in Australia or New Zealand, or come and be a waitress, you will earn lots of money in the special economic zone. And then once they're there, it's a trap, and they are forced to perform sex work, and it's very difficult to get out. So that was just a few examples. We are trying to work on this with the government, particularly Lao Women's Union, NKOMC and Ministry of Technology and Communications, as well as police. We need to be thinking of how to address this from lots of different perspectives. We need to strengthen the legal and policy frameworks. There are a lot of laws that can be used, the Penal Code, the law against combating violence against women and children, to name a few, cybercrime law, but none of them specifically deal with the gendered nature of technology-facilitated gender-based violence, so that does need to be strengthened. We need to strengthen response mechanisms, so Lao Women's Union, Lao Youth Union, health services, police, they need to be better aware of this issue so that they can respond more appropriately. Lao Women's Union, because we've been working with them, are now much better equipped to respond and understand. I was just told by Lao Women's Union this morning that they had a series of sex workers in Bulakamsai who had clients, and then the client said, I want to film you so that I can upload it to a pornography website. The sex workers said, no, I do not consent. And so then they were beaten and shocked, actually, with kind of a shock tool. And so this is a very serious, very serious issue, and it's only going to increase, so we really need to put together efforts to combat this. We need to invest in prevention, so particularly incidences of young men sharing their partner's intimate nude photos, for example. This can very easily be prevented with proper comprehensive sexuality education and healthy relationships education. And finally, we need to increase the data and research in this area. This is the first in Laos, the only in Laos. I believe Plan International is thinking of doing something, but we need more information on this to better combat it. And finally, the full report will be out in English and Lao in November. During the 16 days of activism, it will be released by UNFPA, NKOMC, MTC and Lao Women's Union. So there you can read the full report in Lao. Khắp trai there.
ขอบใจท่านนางวิกตอเรียเนาะว่าแล้วต่อไปจะเป็นการนำเสนอบทเกี่ยวกับ Lao laborers immigration migration flow towards Thailand เนาะที่จะนำเสนอโดยท่านเคนเอนโดผู้ต่างหน้าจาก IOM และเพิ่นจะมาพร้อมกับนายแปลภาษาของเพิ่นเนาะท่านอนุสิทธิ์เนาะขอเรียนเชิญ